If you look at anyone that talked about partnerships in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, channel was they take the software and they resell it. They take the software and they go to market with it. Nowadays, partnerships is truly about mutual outcomes. It's about working together to the betterment of the customer. So even those agencies from early HubSpot have evolved. Actually, Newbreed, the place I work now, is a good example. They were a marketing agency. They were in the first cohort of partners to join the community, and they've evolved to now be a revenue management firm. We help companies to, move to HubSpot if they'd like to, and we can architect their tech stack and we be very intentional. We can do demand gen, but these days being asked by the market is centered around deep, like really deep go-to-market support, helping them to integrate softwares and re-platform, design their go-to-market strategy, help them in terms of being an extension of their fundamental RevOps, functions within the business. That evolution goes back to your question of how do I define it? I think partnerships is about other businesses in close proximity to yours that help your customer have a better outcome with you.
Welcome to the Sales Gravy Podcast. I'm Jeb Blount Jr. filling in for Jeb Blount Sr. And today we've got Barrett King, who's going to walk us through some really interesting sales, channel sales, go-to-market strategy. I'm a dummy when it comes to this, so I'm really excited for you all to hear from someone who has had the experience, walked the walk, gotten the t-shirt, and it'll be a really fun conversation for us to have. But before we get started, if you haven't had experience with Sales Gravy University, take a look at learn.salesgravy.com. And this is a platform that is the most powerful on-demand sales training platform for sales professionals in the world. It's 1,000+ hours of sales-specific on-demand content. It's curated. We have 40+ experts who contribute their expertise to the platform. And we also run live training courses. These live training courses are workshops 90 to 120 minutes long that are focused on a particular subject. We run weeks-long boot camps on full curriculums, and we also have mastermind groups that you can jump into, network, and learn to sharpen your skills from other sales professionals. If you haven't had a chance to go check it out, go to learn.salesgravy.com. You can use the code FREECOURSE when you check out to access any of our courses, one of them for free, and get experience with Sales Gravy University. So let's kick this off. Barrett, introduce yourself to the audience in the Sales Gravy world and where you came from, what you're doing, and give us a little bit of background as to your professional experience and why we're having this conversation.
What an intro. That might be one of the most enriched intros I've been a part of, so thank you. I don't have a t-shirt. I bought a sweatshirt instead, so it's important to note. I didn't go with the t-shirt route, but it's a good call out. I should go back and get it. Jokes aside, man. Thank you for having me here. I'm excited.
More expensive, yeah. but yeah. Way more comfy. A little bit harder earned.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I invested more in that sense. My background. So let me give you an idea, kind of frame this whole thing out. I have a design degree, interestingly enough. I don't use it very often, but I went to school for design, graduated at a time when the market wasn't doing so well. It was 2008. I'm dating myself, but 2008. Found my way into restaurants because the industry was booming. We were spending cash in that sector, but not in design, frankly. So did that for a few years. I got out and went into tech. I like to think about it that way. I got out of the industry, went into technology, did it briefly for about a year. And then 2010 hit, housing crash, and I got laid off. Found my way back into restaurants for a brief period of time. And fast forwarding to the last few years, I've been back in technology. So after the restaurant stint, the exit of that company, in terms of, we had built a bunch of different locations and we had a multi-unit restaurant group and things are going well. It was time for me to go and do something different. I think that the industry was interesting to me, but the lifestyle was really hard to live. 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. is not healthy. I knew I wanted to be back in tech, right? So I parlayed my restaurant experience into an early stage tech startup. I had a friend who introduced me to somebody who was building a business around selling to restaurants. It was a really interesting way to build on my background and experience, but then add to something new. That startup was successful. We actually exited after about a year and a half, and I found myself with another opportunity to reinvent, to change myself again. And before I talk about what I did next, I like to use this analogy because I think it's valuable in terms of how I describe the way that I've built my career. So I think about this as the Lego mat we all had when we were kids, that green Lego mat you built your house on or your ship or whatever. And that Lego mat is what everyone has when they graduate primary education, whether that was your bachelor's, associate's, doctorate, whatever it is. And some folks on that Lego mat have a variety of bricks, different shapes and colors. And so the people that knew they wanted to be a lawyer their whole life, they've got a bunch of green 6x6 bricks and they're already stacked up and they're good to go when they leave primary education. Then there's folks like me, and I think for a lot of us, that have a bunch of different bricks of a variety of colors and shapes and not a ton of organization to it. And so over those couple of years, I say couple, but it was like 7 or 8 years after college, I put more and more bricks without organization onto my mat. And it wasn't until I was at this startup where I started to realize those bricks actually had value in that they could be diverse. There could be a little bit of management background and P&L, so I knew how to run a business to some extent. I had hired and trained folks, so I had a little bit of the training and development, and certainly from a hiring perspective, some knowledge and background there. And so I took all of that, used more of it at this startup, but it wasn't until this next stage that I really realized in many ways the value of those different components and how they come together. Because I had an opportunity to work at HubSpot. And HubSpot was an incredible at the time, earlier stage startup. It had just gone public. There were about 450 people. And fun fact, I actually said no in the early conversations. I don't want to work here. It's too big. But after hearing their mission and falling in love with the idea of helping companies grow, I spent the next 8.5 years of my career there. Did a bunch of different things. I built a book of business around helping partners to join the program and start to scale their interactions, their abilities with the program, with the business, with the tools. I was the first head of sales training for a partner, and then ultimately led the direct sales training motion as well, and did that for a few years. Fascinating, interesting experience doing that globally. I was a channel account manager and helped manage some of HubSpot's top partners for about 4.5, 5 years. I was a corporate sales lead and managed a team there, bringing partner to the upmarket space. And then my last year or so at the company, I ended up doing go-to-market strategy globally around partner acquisition, onboarding, acceleration, and things like that. When I left HubSpot months back, I did so because while I thoroughly enjoyed my 8.5 years there, my Lego bricks were starting to become stale. I wanted to do something different in terms of I had built this platform I could stand on, but how do I take that and build the next stage of my career? Long-winded story aside, I joined their North American partner multi-years running in terms of the number one partner in the ecosystem. And I did that because now I could take my Lego bricks around HubSpot and technology and startup and go and join a really successful, multifaceted firm that was using a lot of the technology that I was well versed in, while combining then my sales background, my training and development, and my just sort of general go-to-market. And so actually here I lead as senior director of revenue, the sales, BDR, and sort of partnership mechanisms here in concert as well. So that's my long-winded story, but I think about it now as I've got this less of a vertical tower and more of a bit of a pyramid with a flat top that I get to stand on through my Lego bricks of experience.
I want to dive into the different components. You had all those brick parts and you put them together and you built a beautiful ship or a castle or whatever you want to call it. And I'm interested from you mentioned the sales training aspect of this, and this is a challenge for a lot of organizations. The enablement, if you want to use the buzzword in the industry these days. When you were in that training position, whether that was at your startup and at HubSpot, and even now as a leader of a business, what are some of the insights you drew from being a sales trainer that other organizations should pay attention to? What are some of those challenges that you actually overcame? How you did it, and then what does it mean for shaping the success of the teams that you work with?
So when I think about sales training, just in terms of knowledge transfer, as I started to say there, one of the things that's most important, and I got to give credit to Brian Muller. He was on my team at HubSpot. Really smart guy. For those of you that are listening, go look him up on LinkedIn. Really great human, tons of good value to share. Brian Muller came up with this idea of TAPA as a framework: theory, application, practice, assessment. I take zero credit. Absolutely brilliant concept. Because what we were doing at the time, what I had done specifically in the partner mechanism, as I was describing around helping somebody who was brand new to HubSpot learn the baseline knowledge of, and the site that I set was on a 6-month tenured individual. So somebody at 6 months should be able to do X, Y, and Z. I wanted somebody at 2 months to be able to do that. Then I moved it back and said, okay, at 2 months, I want you to be able to do the thing that somebody at 9 months can do. And ultimately, as we matured, I said, I want at 2 months you to do what the average person at 12 months can do. And the idea was, if I set my sights on a 1-year tenured individual in terms of their capacity and abilities, and I focused all of my knowledge transfer on taking as much context as possible and translating context to actionable skills, then I could take somebody who was effectively 6 to 9 months, 6 to 12 months on ramp and bring that down to 2 or 3 months. And we did that in the partner element of the sales training and onboarding program. What was fascinating is when I started working with Brian, we said, well, how do we bring this to the direct team, which was a slightly different sale, because the partner org was working with other businesses, marketing agencies at the time, to help them to package, price, and sell the software, help them to go to market alongside HubSpot. It's a different skill set than a direct team member who has to prospect, discover, run a proper demo, run a sort of solutions exploration and close, a set of software business. And so Brian's idea being TAPA, theory, application, practice, assessment, the value was that we all of a sudden had a framework to operate it in. And that's the thing that I keep going to go back to here quite a bit. It's the idea that training talks a lot about milestones. Can they run a discovery? Can they run a connect call? Can they do this functional activity? But if you don't service it up to 30,000 feet and look at the landscape of that body of work, then ultimately, what are we driving towards? These are check boxes perhaps along the way. And we try and help people to say, well, you should all fit into this box because it mandates some measure of proficiency. TAPA allowed us to say theory, application, practice, assessment. Again, the theory was the knowledge transfer. The practice component was in session, practice with peers. So now we had theory, knowledge transfer, practice. You've heard something. Now go do it with your peers in the session. And at that point, the application, the practice were taking place in an environment where we could coach. So now we had layered the two things together. So the difference that I started to see in this early, evolution, if you will, of the training program was the idea that historically it was very theory centric. Here's the tool and what it does. Here's how I run a discovery call. Here's the types of questions we ask. The application was taking place later. Now we're saying, let's move it further up in the process. Let's ensure that somebody is getting a chance to do a little bit of this work live. The practice was then done with their peers and then on their own, certainly. And then we could assess it within a framework, an objective framework. So we could say, are you proficient to the level that we need? And so that was one of the things that I learned early on and that I think I see the most successful orgs do now is give a really clear guideline set and framework for what it means to go from zero to successful. And then secondary to that is ongoing. So there is a misconception that onboarding or training stops when that person goes into the funnel. The best organizations develop some sort of a mechanism. I've seen things like ongoing management of their development. So there are individuals like HubSpot has this and how Salesforce does, where there are people that are managers that don't manage a team. They are managers as a part of a segment, and all they do is coach and develop. That's a new, interesting trend, right? And one could argue, and I'll stop here and land the plane on my speech, but one could argue that, and everyone likes to, right? AI is going to change the landscape. AI is going to enable us to perhaps be more effective, but it still comes back to the fundamentals of how do we capture our voice and amplify it using the tools around us. And so I think about really healthy, really good, go-to-market strategy with proper training and development. It's those three components in terms of being intentional around what you baseline against, building a very clear framework of proficiency, and then continuous reinforcement and develop over the long term.
I like the framework, and that's what at Sales Gravy when we work with organizations, the word we use is framework. You have to be flexible, but you have to have parameters. If you are, like you said, putting everyone into a single bucket, you lose certain levels of human intelligence. You lose their talent. You can lose their proficiency and their skills in your organization because you put them in a bucket that didn't make sense for that human being. But if you have that framework, that TAPA framework's incredible. You are able to knowledge transfer, then apply that and coach it in real time, but in a safe space. And then by the time you get to the application, those people at 2 months can do what someone in 12 months should be able to do much, much quicker, which means, your organization is much more effective, much more efficient. And I like that, we bring in AI, right? AI is going to probably take over for the next several years and maybe the next 100 years and whatever that looks like. But AI only makes you better. It cannot make you good. Like if you have a bad process or if you don't have a framework, AI is not going to fix that for you. Well, at least in the near future. I don't know. No one knows what this is going to look like. Give it time. But in the meantime, I love the framework approach to this and the difference between training and coaching, right? The knowledge transfer versus the enhancement of what that person already knows. And there's a huge difference there because as leaders, when you look at your organization, you need to understand that there are people who cannot be coached because they haven't been trained yet, or there are people who have been trained and need to be coached, and you have to understand the differences between the two. You talk about your different roles between channels, partnerships, direct, and an area that I honestly haven't had a lot of conversations around on the podcast, at least, is channel partnerships. And this is a place where I think our audience will get a lot of value out of. So kind of define from your end, and I know this is what you're currently doing as well, what channel partnership means, what success looks like for a team, for an organization, when they're finding other network partners to go to market and win for their customers.
Yeah, I think it's the last piece you just started with. So I'll kick off there. And it's the idea that by working with another organization, we deliver more value to our customers, called the value triangle. So the idea that myself, call me a software or service, whatever I am, my business, plus some other external force, another business, plus the intersection of our softwares and services equals exponentially more value for our customer. You think about keeping the customer at the center of everything that you do. When you establish your go-to-market strategy, in particular now, you've got marketing, got to have marketing, right? That helps you get out in the world and create awareness. And that's table stakes. You should have great marketing, both inbound and demand gen based. You should have a very clear ABM strategy. You should be very intentional around, how you do dark social and how you're just very intentional around your brand awareness. Fine. Everyone should know that. Sales is the next evolution. This started to become more prevalent around the time that companies like HubSpot and otherwise were, in many ways, ideating in this concept of inbound, right? Could we attract somebody with knowledge and then use our expertise-based sales team to further educate, nurture, deliver value, and ultimately close a customer? Again, table stakes today. But as a third pillar of go-to-market right now, partnerships has become the trendy thing to talk about. Channel aside, I would say partnerships in general, very specifically, should be about the value triangle and the proximity of another business to the thing that your customer is doing. So example's sake here, you're a software company. You do something for a customer. It doesn't really matter what that is. What you should be doing is looking for the places in which other softwares, other services are intersecting with that customer and your solution. Reason being, those are your first opportunities to go to market together. But people love to say better together in partnerships right now. The idea is 1 + 1 = 3. When you think about the base fundamentals of it, we go back to some of the earlier conversation we were having around like this idea of knowledge transfer versus coaching versus training, right? Knowledge transfer versus knowledge sort of enhancement. I think about our standard go-to-market, like in some ways training in this example. What I mean is like it's a knowledge transfer. Let me help my customer understand something. Coaching is partnerships in many ways as a go-to-market strategy because your customers already theoretically have the trust of this partner, right? So the other business going to market alongside your software. So the best example I love giving, because it's a classic one, is HubSpot, right? HubSpot's early partner program was identified as an opportunity by this guy named Pete because he observed that some of HubSpot's most successful customers were working with marketing agencies. It's kind of a logical thing, right? HubSpot is a marketing software. Marketing agencies are using that to deliver value to their customers. If you take that example and you say, well, how do we modernize that today? Those partners, those agencies in many ways were coaching, right? They already had the customer's trust. The customer was already working with them to do blog content, write emails, build a website, whatever it is. And so if HubSpot, as they did, observe that that was the case, then let's go to those agencies before they get to the customer and say, hey, we're going to work with you to use our software to do that work. And so I think about this sort of modern strategy of channel. If you look at anyone that talked about partnerships in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, channel was they take the software and they resell it. They take the software and they go to market with it. Nowadays, partnerships is truly about mutual outcomes. It's about working together to the betterment of the customer. So even those agencies from early HubSpot, years have evolved. Actually, Newbreed, the place I work now, is a good example. They were a marketing agency. They were in the first cohort of partners to join the community, and they've evolved to now be a revenue management firm. What we do is we help companies to certainly, move to HubSpot if they'd like to, and we can architect their tech stack and we be very intentional. We can do demand gen, but a lot of our work these days being asked by the market is centered around deep, like really deep go-to-market support, helping them to integrate softwares and re-platform, design their go-to-market strategy, help them in terms of being an extension of their fundamental RevOps, functions within the business. That evolution goes back to your question of how do I define it? I think partnerships is about other businesses in close proximity to yours that help your customer have a better outcome with you. What that's defined as is unique, obviously, to each vertical.
I want to dive into possibly your thoughts around people who are interested in this aspect of business, especially those at the startup level. I think that you talk about HubSpot. HubSpot's a pretty large organization at this point, and your passion was in tech, and it sounds like you have a passion for startup as well. When leaders of the sales org, of small sales team, or maybe someone who is developing their business from that that seed round to the Series C, often to their more mature stages. You know, with that partnership model in mind, what on the ground makes them successful? What are the first steps to creating a really robust, systematic approach to working with businesses that are in lockstep with you to make their customers successful, make your business successful, and ultimately dive deeper than the hey, go resell our products, but to actually strategize about their go-to-market strategy.
Yeah, make it with the customer first. Customer's going to tell you what they want you to do. They're going to tell you if that business or businesses like that are helping them to get more value. They're going to shed light on where you should invest. Frankly, the question I get often is, how do I know where to start? And in some ways, you ask that. I think ultimately it lands on talking to your most open customers. Who else are you working with? What other solutions you're using? What other services are you leaning into? Talk to us about your tech stack. Talk to us about the way that you're going to market, because you're going to find a pattern pretty quickly, even if you've only got 25 customers. I bet of 25 customers, 6 to 8, 10 to 12 maybe, are working in some capacity in the same way. Just naturally, it's the way it organically takes place. Then you have to listen to that intersection, be very clear on why they chose to do that. For some folks, they say, well, shouldn't I design that solution? Shouldn't I offer services? Shouldn't I offer better onboarding, right? Shouldn't I offer ongoing tech support? Shouldn't I offer that as an integration? Maybe it helps inform your product strategy and your own go-to-market. But I think ultimately the leverage that you get from partnerships comes from understanding that we are offering things that work well together. And if we both augment each other, we both win. It really is better together, that fun phrase everyone likes to use. The reason that works is because we keep the customer at the nucleus of everything. And the ways that it doesn't, the place you see it most often not actually succeed is when it goes to the issue. You sort of made a comment about this, Jeb, like the idea that just go sell my software, right? I can't tell you how many times as a revenue leader at an agency, I hear somebody, right? Either I had somebody call my cell phone the other day. I actually don't know how they got my cell phone, reach out to me and say, hey, we thought that we could do this, this, and this, and you could use our software to go help your customers. And I was like, but like, what's in it for me? And I hate to say that selfishly, but if you tell me that by doing that, it's going to help my customer get more value, now you got my attention. What this person was trying to do was to get me to sell their software. It's very transparent, right? When you start to establish a baseline, the customer's outcome, the customer's betterment is the mission for your organization. And you align the vectors of your business. Now your marketing and your sales are speaking the same language. And now you make your partners an extension of that. They can go to market on your behalf. They already have your customers' trust, so they can go and have that dialogue for you. They can be a leader into a new market. They can help you tap into an emerging market. All of these different opportunities open up when you go to market together. So true partnership, I think in many ways, if you Google the word and you look at the Webster Dictionary version, is about togetherness, is about these close proximity relationships that are about better outcomes. And so when you effectively make that the core of what you do, then whether you're a B2B SaaS firm or you're a healthcare manufacturing tech company, it's irrelevant what you do because your customer's the center of it. Then your go-to-market aligns when your vectors do at the same time.
So talk about the messaging there. Like that person called you and you sussed out immediately that it was all about them and that they wanted you to resell. So how do you form messaging when you go reach out to the where your vectors cross and you should have a good relationship? What does that messaging sound like, and what grabs people's attention to start the conversation and say, hey, I think that we can win together and be better together, and our customers will benefit from it. What is the script kind of sound like, and how would you approach that?
What a fun question. I actually really like that. So I would immediately go to, hey, Barrett, I've been doing some research. I talked to a bunch of the customers that you have, and they shared X as a challenge. So identify the challenge or the opportunity, irrelevant. The thing is the sort of moment you can highlight. So I'm going to make this up completely, right? I'm going to say, we talked to some of your customers, and they shared that while HubSpot's been really effective in the way that they use it, and you've been exceptional in delivering services on top, they want to be able to send mail to their top customers, and in that opportunity deliver, their favorite, like a bottle of alcohol or their favorite food. And so you think about those like gifting platforms, right? It's a good example, like Sendoso or anything like that, right? The rewards platforms. If they said that to me, I go, well, cool. That's the thing I'm not going to do. Like, I'm not going to go and create a gifting mechanism in my business. I'm an agency. I deliver different services. Two, you've done a little bit of research. And even if you can name drop, I love when they name drop. I talked to so-and-so at this company and they said X. Great, I can validate that. But really, it's about something that they do that adds more value to my interactions with my customer that doesn't do, well, it does three specific things. One, it doesn't ask me for more work. Like it's not telling me I have to go sell something new. Those are hard for me to get on board with unless it's a real value. Two, it's about the customer. And three, it's something that I actually have as a potential gap. Like, okay, cool. So tell me more about what that means. And if the next thing out of their mouth is like, well, if you sell our software, we give you this kickback. I'm like, well, I'm out, right? Or if they're smart, then the messaging is, well, we found that by implementing a gifting strategy, I have a friend at a gifting company, which is how I thought of this. By implementing a corporate gifting strategy as a part of the go-to-market for your customers, the agencies that we work with see a 20% increase in the retention of those customers and a 35% increase in the spend of those customers over 24 months because they invest in more services to help design that go-to-market. I'm like, great. So now you backed it up with data. So observation, sort of like the scientific method, right? Observation, experiment, results. And for me, whether I'm a revenue leader, an IC rep, or the SVP of something important is irrelevant. You gave me fundamental examples, you backed it up with data, and then you made it tangible. That's the way that I think the best folks are going to market. And actually, I'm going to rabbit hole for a second, but I think it's relevant. Just this morning, actually, I talked to one of our BDRs and he was like, hey, I'm trying to figure out, there's a bunch of folks that you know, meaning myself, from your HubSpot years. And I was like, yeah, cool. And he's like, yeah. So how many of them do you think you know? And I said, there's like 8,000, 8,500 employees. I probably know 5,000 of them. Like, oh, that many people? So, well, yeah, I was there for 8.5 years. Okay, cool. Barrett, what do I do with that? So what do you want to do with that? He said, well, I want to approach all of them and be like, hey, I want to help you. And I said, great, do that. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, there's your messaging, not we do this and we do that. And just really simple. Hey, I know that you know Barrett because you guys work together and he works here now. And one of the things that I'm doing because of that is I'm reaching out to folks in his network to say, hey, we help people like you improve their HubSpot, improve their go-to-market, get better ROI out of that intersection there amongst, a variety of other things. And he was like, I can just be that straightforward. I said, of course you can. It can be that simple. So Jeb, that's my very long-winded speech, but that's my take right now is that when I think about partner outreach, when I think about any outreach for that matter, but certainly partner specific, it needs to be human because partnerships are about people working together. And when you start to make it about that, the people, it's a much easier conversation than the sales pitch of like, can we increase ROI by 458% or whatever that is?
I like that BDR. He's got a great heart and he knows what he wants to do, but the overthinking, and the sales professionals all over the world, we overthink, and the truth was just go talk to him, just say I want to help you, and there's going to be if 5,000, maybe 4,000 say no, but that's 1,000 people who said sure, like let's talk and let's see what we can do to help. I love the simplicity of just go tell them you want to help them.
Yeah, it's funny. I used to always say, my early success that I had at HubSpot, this is not braggadocious, this is just the reality of my experience, was absolutely colored by my ego. Like I was a young kid. I come off a startup. I was, cool little 35-person startup and we got acquired. And I walked in and I'm like, this is big old HubSpot. I got to prove myself. And I remember my first conversations with customers, because I was selling to agencies. Our positioning at the time at HubSpot was, their positioning was, you're going to transform who you are and be an inbound agency, which I felt like was very entitled, I guess, in some ways. We were trying to be helpful. Like the whole message was, we're going to help you move in this direction, move from project to retainer, et cetera. What I realized very quickly was like, I was telling people to abandon who they were. But what I want to do as a human, and I want to call them up, and I would call them up and go, hey, I love the work that you're doing. I'd observe something on their website. This is a really cool piece of work. Look, I'm trying to recruit folks to join the partner program, more specifically my team. If you think it's interesting, let's have a 5-minute chat. I'll tell you if you're a good fit. Like at the onset, it looks like you are, but no promises. You got 5 minutes tomorrow at 3:00 to chat about this. Everyone was like, yeah, man, you looked at my website and we had a chat. And then I would get in my convo, and the whole positioning, again, partnership here, right? Was look, I think we can help you build a really profitable business on top of what you're already doing. Like you're a great traditional agency and you're doing really good content marketing. Cool. Our software helps you be more effective. I'm going to help you build some go-to-market strategy around it. Together we can go and we'll sell some software. We're also going to sell some services and they're going to be more profitable and you're going to win and customers are going to better ROI. So they're going to win. And all of these agency leaders were like, cool, that's partnership. And some of my peers were doing that. They were winning. That's partnership. The folks that were saying join the partner program and sell our software were really struggling because it wasn't partnership. So again, land the plane, I'm ranting here, but I love this stuff because I think being a human and being transparent and being yourself versus building a template and going through this whole iteration and just go for it actually does matter in partnerships because it's about being people first.
I really like the positioning, and this is where even direct salespeople, but a lot of channel partnership sales professionals miss as well. Is that I'm the authority, right? Like I do this every day. I work and I build businesses on top of other businesses. So let's take 5 minutes tomorrow. I think I can help you. I took a look at your information, and let's have a quick conversation. If it's a fit, we move forward. If it's not a fit, you took 5 minutes, you learned some information, and you can move on with your life. So, and then when you get into the conversation, you are the person who's evaluating them, and they are they're in a position where they're interested, like they're keen to. I want to build a business on top of my business. Like how do I qualify for this? And I think that's a very subtle, really successful way to go about it. And it is ego. And Mike Weinberg, who I can't take credit for this, like you can't take credit for the TAPA, is that he talks about how when you are working with somebody else, that they are your partner in lockstep immediately. Like you have to be the person who's helping them grow their business, not the salesperson. You have to be the person who's delivering business acumen back to them that they didn't have before they met with you. Are you making the person better after they walk away from that conversation? If no, in that 5 minutes, you're positioning it. If I'm not making you better, we're going to end this right now. But if I feel like
part ways as friends,
let's part ways as friends. I want to go back to the BDR and that person you're talking about, who is going to go to call those 5,000 people that you knew at HubSpot. A challenge is, again, back to where do you get started? And if you had, I'll call it 2.5 years ago, and be kind to you. If it was just a couple of years ago and you were starting out again, what would you tell a BDR to do in order to talk to current customers and who they're working with? What are some strategies around finding a target list of people that you can go say, hey, I know that that we can help you, and I want to tell you how. But I want to learn about your business a little bit deeper first. Like, what would be that process?
Yeah, I love that you said 2.5 years. It's a lot longer, but that's okay. I'd be a student of the problem. I think this is a really good, important point. I said this one other time somewhere, but it comes to mind right now. Understand that as a BDR, your job is to learn. Your job is to try really hard, and your job is to fail a bunch, like not a little bit, a lot. And the way that you do that, starting out, how to build your list as you describe it, your sort of target approach, is to think about who your customers are, which many folks do, and then go and call those customers. So what I would do if I'm BDR at XYZ company, right, is I would go to whoever my manager is and say, cool, what customers can I go listen to, talk to, engage with? They're going to tell you no, but there's probably recorded calls, right? Now in the days of Gong and Clary and everything else, there's likely a place that I can go and listen to customer calls. Let me go listen to them solving problems. Let me go listen to them articulating why our software or services are helping them to accomplish that goal or overcome that challenge. That's going to help me to start to institutionalize and really ground myself in what are the common problems, challenges, and outcomes we can deliver as a part of why customers work with us. And the next thing that I'm going to do is go and say, cool, I've done that across 30, 40, 50 different calls that I've listened to, right? And maybe it's you're by vertical or maybe you're by segment, whatever you're segmented as, that's fine. Do it in that space. Then what I would do is I would go to LinkedIn and I would look up those customers' LinkedIn company pages. And on the right-hand side in LinkedIn, there's a people also looked at section. For those of you who don't know it, it's the most magical thing in the history of building a list as a BDR. Without Sales Navigator, you don't need any of that stuff. You can literally just go to LinkedIn as a free account and it's going to show you the 5 to 7, I think it's, or 10 or so other companies that folks looked at. Those are most likely either their competition or like businesses. And so now you've got close proximity, similar potential problem, and you know who they are. I didn't have to go and buy Zoom info. I got friends there. Sorry, I won't say your name out loud, but like, sorry, I don't need Zoom info on this one. I will someday. But for now, I've got LinkedIn, I've got proximity, and I've got, most important, context. As a BDR, as in any role, to be clear, if you're a sales AE, if you're the first partner hire, I always love those folks. Like, where do I start? You need to get context first because context makes you powerful and effective. Understand the problem, go and hear somebody talk about the problem, and then you yourself go and talk about the problem. And the way that you do that is this is how I did it. Go to LinkedIn, look for those proximity, those close, next door neighbor, if you will, businesses, and then reach out to the folks. Don't call the CEO. CEO is busy. Like, I'm a senior director, and I can tell you that my email starts at 6 a.m. and goes until usually 7 p.m. My Slack starts usually around 7:30 and goes till about 8 o'clock. I'm not saying I'm always on like that, to be clear. I'm a human being, but pretty busy, right? I've got back-to-back meetings throughout the day, et cetera. So think about when your person is most receptive. This is a third bit of advice that I think is the most valuable. So start with observe the problem, listen to the problem, act on it. Second, look for those proximity businesses because generally speaking, they probably have a similar issue. You can either name drop if you're allowed to or certainly speak to it. The last piece here is being intentional around the way in which you reach out to these folks. So we talked about being a human and all those different components of the outreach campaign. I would also think about when. So my most successful email responses were when I would schedule the emails to go out. So when I joined HubSpot, we didn't have a scheduler. I would just make a list of people, make an email, and then at between 8:30 and 10 p.m., I would sit at my computer and just send them. And then about 6 months in, we got a scheduling tool. That was the birth of the Sales Hub, that they call it now. And so I could schedule these emails. All of my emails went out at obscure times, not 8:30, 8:37, not 8:45, 8:42, obscure numbers, and between 8:30 and 10:30 p.m., or sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes in the morning between 6 and 7:15 or so, 7:20. Because when I thought about who my audience was, I knew, because I had listened to calls, I had made calls, that they were likely, as an executive, as the POC I'm looking for, sitting on their couch, having a glass of their favorite adult beverage, or watching the kids run by, or maybe the kids finally went to bed and they're turning on their favorite show, whatever. And we all have this. For those you can see me, there's a phone in our hand. We're flipping through something, and I get an email from Barrett, the BDR at coolwebsites.com. And he's like, hey, I'm on your website right now, and I observe that you have this opportunity. I've talked to some other people in the same industry. They've shared this problem. This is how we help solve it. And if you're willing to spend 5 minutes, I'll tell you if I can help you with the same thing. You do that enough, you get a response. I had a really, really high response rate because I related to where my customer was and when they were most available throughout that journey.
If you didn't catch it for some reason, go back and listen to the last 15 minutes of this podcast, because that was training. It wasn't coaching. It was training, like we talked about in the early part of this podcast, and
Sure.
It was absolute gold. I cannot thank you enough. I think that the everything you just shared there is so valuable. It's actionable. Go do that. It makes you better. It makes the profession better. You're not going to get the call. You're not going to be the person who calls and says, hey, I've got a software that I think would be really successful if you sold it, for us. That's the what's in it for me is never there when you are shotgunning, when you're sending emails that don't have any context. You're not building lists that make sense. And Barrett just gave you the tools, the language, the how to, the what to say, and go win some more deals. Barrett, thank you so much for your time. Before I let you go, where can people go find you, learn from you? I'm not the smartest guy in this room right now, so go follow Barrett. But where can people find information about you, learn from you, and ultimately make themselves a little bit better by learning from folks like yourself?
I appreciate that. That's kind words. Look, I'm by no means the smartest guy in any room that I'm in. I don't want to be. I want to learn from those around me. So I'm on LinkedIn. I try and be active. I'm fairly active to that extent. Connect with me. Anyone listening right now, I will accept your connection. I don't deny people. Don't try and sell me something right away. That's a new style. I don't love that. But I will accept you. If you sell me after that, I might delete you, but we'll see. I also have my own show. It's called Outcomes. It is conversations with partnership leaders that have been there, done the work, and have a story to tell about it. Find me on all the platforms, YouTube, certainly Spotify and Apple as well. Frankly, and I think simply put, my biggest takeaway as a sales professional and growing in my career is to remember that this is about people. Like, this is about human beings. If you humanize your prospect, they're far less scary. It's a lot about there's a lot of what I talk about, that and certainly partnerships. And then my advice is just ask. When you're afraid to ask a question, just go for it. When you don't know the answer, just go for it. Follow people like Jeb. He's brilliant. Follow people that you admire. They're brilliant, but you're going to learn better when you put yourself out there. This is an awesome conversation. I really enjoyed it. And thank you for having me on.
Awesome. Oh, thank you so much for joining the Sales Gravy podcast. Remember, if you haven't had a chance to go check out Sales Gravy University, learn.salesgravy.com. Use the code FREECOURSE to download any of our courses for free and go check out that platform. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on the Sales Gravy podcast. Thanks, Barrett.
Hey, I'm doing a happy dance because you watched this video. Make sure that you click like and subscribe so that you never miss one of our amazing sales training videos.